Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope was directed by George Lucas and was the very first Star Wars movie to ever come out. Originally, it was titled just Star Wars, and then George Lucas changed the name to Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, and now here we are. But before I get into my review for A New Hope, real quick story. When I was an ignorant 7-year-old, I started off with the prequel trilogy. I think I only saw episode 2 and then I watched episode 3. And one time I was with my friends, and after we watched episode 3 together, I was like, I can't wait for episode 4. And they're like, it already came out. So that was always just a little funny story that I bring up when I talk about my first experience with A New Hope and discussing that movie. So now let's get into my review for episode 4. This movie, as you know, it was one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. It is a classic, and it did so much for the sci-fi genre. It exceeded all expectations. The movie starts off rather fast, opening with this sequence that takes place between the Empire and Princess Leia. This is where we're first introduced to Darth Vader, and what is a great opening scene for that character. You know right away this guy means business, and if you mess with him, he's gonna do some really bad things to you. Princess Leia then sends the droids off to Tatooine, and now we're on Tatooine for a good chunk of this movie. A lot of my friends complain about the Tatooine scenes. They say they're really slow and boring, but I don't agree with that. I feel like we have such good characters in a rather dull environment to the point where it actually makes these scenes entertaining to watch. It's not like these characters are boring, C-3PO, R2-D2, and the others. They are actually quite entertaining characters, and therefore this scene taking place on Tatooine is a lot more fun than it would have been without them. A lot of people also complain about Luke. They say he's an annoying, whiny teen, but I really like Luke in this movie, and I get where he's coming from. He clearly wants a better life than the life he has with his aunt and uncle, where he's strapped down and always working with them. I don't blame him for wanting to be a little bit more adventurous and going out doing things in the world, and considering that he is the son of Anakin, he has so much potential to do more than just work for his uncle. Plus, he barely knows anything about the Force, the dark side, or any of that kind of stuff, and that's when Obi-Wan Kenobi is introduced in the film. He goes by the name Ben Kenobi to hide his true identity, and the first time we see him in the movie, there's a really weird Jedi call that scares away the Tusken Raiders. I just thought it was so out of place when I heard it the other day for the first time in a while watching this movie. I just thought it was funny. Of course, Alec Guinness is the perfect casting choice for the character Obi-Wan Kenobi. Him and Ewan McGregor do such a great job as this character over the course of both trilogies. And by the time we get to this exposition scene where Obi-Wan is explaining to Luke what the Clone Wars were and that his father was killed by Darth Vader, even though we know that's not true, this is a very powerful exposition scene. It could have been so much more boring, but instead it sets up this universe for future films to come eventually. After that, we head to the Mos Eisley Cantina, where we have several great moments take place in just a small amount of time. One of these moments includes Obi-Wan taking out his lightsaber and cutting off a guy's arm who was bothering Luke. It's corny looking back on it, but at least they show some blood. And then you have Han versus Greedo. Who shot first? That controversy. It is a great scene. I really don't care who shot first. The scene itself is so good that it never bothers me with the fact that there's so many different variations of the scene alone. It's mind-boggling, but the scene itself is awesome. Now, while all of this is going on, the Empire is chasing down our ragtag group of characters, and this leads into what might be the best sequence of events in the entire movie, or even the entire trilogy from the originals. What is that, you ask? That is the Death Star sequence. This sequence of events is so much fun. I'll get into that in a little bit. But first, can I mention just how good this movie looks for its time? It came out in 1977, and I know it's gone through a couple of different versions. They made the movie look better over time with all of the special editions, but the movie without those special editions still holds up and looks great in present day. That's how much work went into making the sets in this film, as well as all the graphical elements. It looks fantastic even now. But going back to the Death Star sequence, this is where the movie is at its absolute best. So many memorable moments, a lot of great lines that are hysterical. Can I mention, quick side note, how funny this movie is? It's one of the funniest Star Wars movies to ever come out. The one-liners are part of why this movie is so good. They make it what it is, and without without them, this movie would not have been as good. But the humor really hits you hard in A New Hope. When people talk about the memorable Death Star moments, they mention the garbage chute, where there's this alien thing that's trying to attack Luke, almost drowns him, and then this thing is just collapsing, about to crush them, and you have a couple of funny lines between C-3PO and everyone else. As well as Crazy Han, he's shooting at these stormtroopers, they're chasing him, he's chasing them. I love this one change in the special edition, where originally it was Han going into a room. It was full of just a couple of stormtroopers in the first version, but in the newest version, this room is full of thousands upon thousands of stormtroopers. Then we have the Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader lightsaber battle, and it's pretty terrible. Not much action is in this fight, just a couple of hits back and forth with some dialogue. It is meaningful dialogue and very powerful dialogue, but the action itself in this scene is pretty minimum, but I give them credit for at least trying. And once that's over, this pretty much leads us into our finale, which is the battle over the Death Star, and a battle that I did not like that much when I was a kid. In fact, the last time I saw this movie, which was around a year or two ago, I still didn't like it that much. I always said this was my least favorite part of the entire movie, but then when I watched this movie a couple of days ago, I changed my mind. The scene was so much better for myself for some reason. I have no idea why. I guess now I just appreciate what the visual effects look like in this movie, considering it's 2019 for a 1977 film. If you can just sit there and appreciate how good the visual effects look in A New Hope, then you should have no problem with this finale taking place over the Death Star. I think it's great, and this entire movie is phenomenal. After then Han saves the day and Luke blows up the first Death Star, we are greeted by our last scene in the movie, which is an award ceremony congratulating Luke and the rest of the gang for doing what they did at the end of the movie. And guys, that's pretty much my way of summing up A New Hope and a review. A New Hope is one of my favorite films of all time, definitely top 5. I love this movie, it is a classic. This movie launched the beginning of a love for myself, which is Star Wars. So I'm giving Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, a 100%. Unfortunately, I don't think Star Wars can ever get better than this original trilogy, and A New Hope is everything that makes Star Wars good in the flesh. I love this movie, and it will never be a bad film for myself. Alright, I want to hear all of your guys' thoughts on Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Be sure to let me know down below in the comment section what your thoughts are on it. If you're new to my channel, click the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.